Right, so the topic I want to cover is getting ready for that road trip. Now, when the missus and I first got ready for our original All Aussie Adventures road trip back in the end of 2022, there was a lot of information out there as to what to do, how to prepare, what you need, and it was all kind of all over the shop. So I'm going to put together the top 10 things that I feel really helped the missus and I on our 10,000 kilometer road trip all through South Australia, Victoria, Northern Territory, Queensland, through the outback, through the Alps, through the rainforest, everything like that. So this might vary between car to car. I'm gonna assume that your car's a bit older, hence why you're probably on the channel, and maybe you're not taking a 10,000k road trip. You're taking 1,000k over, I don't know, a week or something like that. So I'm going to break this down into 3 sections: vehicle maintenance, camping items, and survival. This is what I feel works for me. This might vary between vehicle to vehicle, but I reckon that if you get this down pat, then you're going to be set. I would love to hear in the comments as well if you have any extra suggestions, recommendations. I'd love to hear them, and that could almost feature in a follow-up video as well. So let's get stuck into it. Right, I'm going to start in the engine bay. When was the last time you replaced your accessory belt? When was the last time you replaced your coolant hoses? When was the last time you replaced your alternator? I'm going to guarantee you probably haven't, or you don't know. Now, what I did in preparation for our 10,000k trip, because I purchased the car not long before that, I replaced it all. I replaced the alternator, I replaced the belts, I replaced the hose, I replaced everything. And you'll even see in this picture, this is what the car looked like 2 days before the trip. Replace everything. And even if you don't have a chance to replace something, so for example, I didn't have a chance to replace the water pump, I didn't. I took it with me anyway, because even though I don't know when the part was replaced, if I'm traveling, if I'm in the middle of the outback, I had the part with me right there, ready to go, so that if I couldn't do it, I could pay a mechanic to install it or to fit it for me as well. So I actually replaced, for a 10,000k trip, all of that. So I couldn't recommend that enough. And that is not to mention your air filter, your oil filter. Replace as many things as you can. It might cost a little bit upfront, but you absolutely do not want to be stranded in the middle of the outback because you forgot to replace a hose. Well, this sucks. Broke down on the side of a highway in the middle of the outback. Could be near Tennant Creek, could be near Wolf Creek. Ooh. Why am I here? It's because I didn't get NRMA roadside insurance. And that brings me to point number 2, get roadside insurance and coverage. I cannot emphasize that enough. Get roadside assistance. It could save you and your wallet thousands of dollars in towing costs, accommodation costs, and things like that because you broke down somewhere. I cannot emphasize that enough. Please get yourself roadside coverage wherever you're traveling, whether you're traveling just down the road, whether you're traveling for work, whether you're traveling to Perth from Sydney, 4,500 kilometers. Get roadside assistance. All right, so this is pretty comfortable. I've got a couple of tools here. Now, why am I so comfortable? It's because I've broken down on the side of a road and I've got the tools to replace it. Point number 3, grab your common socket set sizes and grab yourself a basic toolbox as well. So for example, that can be your extension thing, the name eludes me, a breaker bar. There you go. And get as many sockets as you can. Keep it with you because you'll be surprised that one of them will actually probably fit. Imperial and metric. And the toolbox, key things that it should contain, especially if you have a 12-volt system. Keep a couple of spare fuses, keep a couple of spare heat shrink, bit of wire, crimp, things like that. Most importantly as well, as I mentioned, a socket set, and you'll be surprised what is very helpful. Get yourself one of these. You'll be surprised how often this has gotten me out of trouble. If you don't have a particular spanner size, if you don't have a socket size, anything like that, get yourself a vice clip, and this can get you in a pinch out of trouble. Also, get yourself a whole bunch of zip ties. Now, there was one incident that I didn't have zip ties, and thankfully there was a kind bloke. He actually had a whole bunch of zip ties in his car. That was the difference between me calling NRMA and me getting home. Ever since that one incident, I have never, ever left home without zip ties. So get yourself a bunch of zip ties, some duct tape, an adjustable, a spanner, and a couple of, a Phillips head and things like that. Keep all your basic, most common tools ready to go in the back wherever you go. One thing I did want to mention when it came to vehicle related, grab yourself some sort of recovery gear. At a minimum, what we did on our All Aussie adventure around Australia, we grabbed some max tracks and we grabbed a shovel. These two are probably the single most important things recovery wise that you can bring with yourself. I mean, you could bring recovery straps and things like that. I didn't personally. I just brought this with myself. Make sure you have some sort of recovery gear, especially if you're planning to do not so much tracks, but like dirt roads to a lookout or anything like that, because I found that a lot of those lookouts do end up on a gravel track, dirt track, and you never know. There could be a washout, there could be a bit of mud, a bit of water, and before you know it, you get stuck. So grab yourself a shovel and max tracks at a minimum. All right, so let's get stuck into the camping aspect of it. Now, of course, if you're traveling near a hotel, or staying in a hotel, this doesn't really apply to you. But when you're camping, tip number 5 is going to be check your campsites and check where you're actually going to camp. In Australia, there is a lot of restrictions when it comes to camping, in particular in national parks. Legally, you cannot camp outside of designated camp areas in national parks unless you get fined and arrested. If you do have a lot more leeway in a state park, and I actually personally prefer camping in state parks. There are a bit less rules and regulations there, but of course the most important thing, especially if you're traveling in the summertime, check the local fire rules. You don't want to be the one to cause a massive bushfire, so please, regardless if you're camping on a private land, if you're camping on state parks, national parks, make sure that you check the fire rules and regulations. Typically it's between November and March. You have a lot of fire bans, so just check your campsites. That would be my tip when it comes to camping. Just check the rules and regulations. It is very important. Right, so you're doing camping, you've sorted out your campsite. Now what about powering your stuff? Now, of course, if you're not staying in a caravan park, you're staying in a national park, or you're staying in a state forest or hip camp, vast majority of the time, there might not be any power supply. So this is where your 12-volt system comes in. So 12-volt systems they range, widely. They can be your basic smart isolator system. I have actually made a video on that. A link to that is in the description below, or you can go a much more complicated DC to DC system. Yes, I have been meaning to make a video on this for a while. I will get there eventually. But more to the point, make sure it's working. Make sure it is actually charging. Make sure that when you park your car in the sun, say a week before you go camping, that it is actually charging it. I would recommend plugging your fridge and test your 12-volt system at least a few days before you even go on a trip. I'd recommend a week, because then it gives you the time to fix it on a weekend or anything like that. So it's one thing to have a 12-volt system, make sure it is actually charging and actually working. So you've got your 12-volt system working, you've got your campsites all organized. How are you actually going to sleep? It's the age-old question, isn't it? Rooftop tent versus swag versus tent. I'm gonna offer my 2 cents here. This might be different for everyone else, but this is how I categorize where works best. If you're traveling 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, you're doing a significant amount of camping, go the rooftop tent. This is what I found worked really well with me and the missus. The reason I say that is when you're spending 10 hours on the road, you gotta pull up camp, then you gotta spend another 10 hours on the road. The last thing you wanna be doing is futzing around with a swag or a tent or anything like that. If you're doing long touring, my personal recommendation, grab yourself a rooftop tent. Now, because we haven't been doing that a lot recently, and the rooftop tent that we had couldn't have any mounting brackets on top for solar panels, max tracks and things, we actually ended up selling it. Another one might be actually in the cards in the future, because I admit, I kind of miss the comfort of a rooftop tent. But for long distance, multi-week touring, rooftop tent, just grab yourself a rooftop tent. If you're doing weekends away or a few days at a time, and that's actually what I've been doing a lot recently, grab yourself a swag. I think one of those swags that have the extendo poles and things like that, I think in my opinion, that's the best compromise. It's quick, it's efficient, you can keep all your bedding in there as well. And that's also another point I want to make as to why I prefer the swag or rooftop tent over a tent. You can keep all your pillows, your sleeping bags, your material, all in the swag or the rooftop tent. You cannot do that on a tent. Yes, on a tent you can. It is very compact on the tent, and for a lot of people it is a great affordable option, and I do get that. It is the most affordable option to get into camping, but I would recommend save a little bit and get yourself into a swag. Yeah, it is the most affordable option, having a tent to get into camping. Don't let that be a barrier to getting out into the great outdoors. But my recommendation, multi-week touring, rooftop tent, short touring, swag. If you're just getting into it, grab yourself a nice trail tent or something like that, and that's how I'd break down your sleeping arrangements. Another tip when it comes to camping is a fire pit. Bring yourself a portable fire pit. There's a lot of places, especially a lot of campsites now, that require you to either bring yourself a fire pit or to use one of their fire pits. Now, I found that in the past, campsites that have a fire pit already there might be a bit too big, might be a bit too small for your requirements. So grab yourself a portable fire pit. What I use is the Adventure Kings fold-out fire pit. Check it out on their website there. I only paid just like $100 or something for it. Very affordable, very compact. It slides anywhere in your boot. Grab that, very easy to wash. It's all made out of steel. I've used it more times than I can count, and it has been an absolute game changer for me. You can also cook in it if you grab like a mesh. So I recommend bring yourself a fire pit. Even if you never use it, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. There's a couple of brands that do it. I think Drifter also do one. Darchi also do another one. I mean, it's all pretty much the same, a fold-out design in effect, but give yourself a foldable fire pit and just chuck it in the back of your rig, and then you'll be happy days after that. Alright, so we've covered off all the vehicle related items, in my opinion. We've also covered off the camping related items, and I'll just quickly mention, bring some disposable like cutlery, bring some food, I mean, all your basics to be comfortable camping, of course a bit of beer as well, if you like. So now I'm going to tap into a bit more of the survival stuff. So when we were traveling 10,000 Ks around Australia, we bought 3 things that, in my opinion, helped. We actually never had to use any of it, but as I mentioned before, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Number 1 is your first aid kit. Grab yourself a first aid kit. You can get these at any camping store, a four-wheel drive store. If you're going towards the outback, grab yourself a snake bite kit as well, because you do got to be careful with all the wildlife and the snakes around there too. These are not expensive. They come with the bandages, tourniquets, everything like that. They come with all the essentials that you need when you're doing long travel. So even though you might not necessarily use it for yourself, you might have to use it for your partner, your kids, your family, your friends, or even someone that you come by stuck on the road as well. So grab yourself a first aid kit, because it could save your life. All right, so let's actually talk about my jerry can holder itself. I do get a lot of questions about this. What this is a bike rack in combination with a side awning L bracket and a super cheap auto jerry can holder with a jerry can inside. So as you can see here, there is an L bracket that actually holds all of this together, and it just clears at the rear bumper. It goes onto a bike rack holder, obviously without the bikes or without the mechanisms for that. That goes into your tow bar and your tow hitch, as you can see. And what makes it really easy is that this can work off of both petrol or water, so you can just have it all there. And even better than that is that for your water supply, you can open it and you can close it right when it's already mounted. So you don't have to worry about a 12-watt pump system or anything like that. So when we did our All Aussie Adventures, this actually had a petrol jerry in it. Now, because I'm not doing that long touring at the moment, I just chuck in a water jerry. And the beauty of it is that I can open the rear tailgate and I clear it pretty much perfectly. There is a slight amount of futzing around that you do have to do, but it means that for the whole camp night, I leave this open. I don't even close it. Everyone has access to their water. Everyone can access the fridge, the 12-volt system, the pantry, everything like that. And I find that this is probably one of the best modifications on the vehicle. This was actually made by my dad. So I do have some plans on maybe strengthening and improving it to put a double one. And he actually gave me the idea of putting a spare guitar carrier on it, but I'm just not sure how thick this material is. But anyway, that's for a whole other topic. But in a nutshell, bring as much water as you can on your trip. And this is one way you can store water out of the vehicle and and free up a bit of space inside. All right, so okay, so the last point I want to make when it came to a bit of survival and stuff like that, and this is what we did bring with us all around Australia, was this. Just a little walkie-talkie. I know it's not big. Eventually I would like to upgrade to like a bit of a GME system and set up in the vehicle, but at a minimum, just have a form of communication. Even if it's not much, you might have to stand outside, you might have to try really hard to get coverage, but at least you've got something that's ready you in. When it comes to trucks, when it comes to trying to overtake, when it comes to approaching roadhouses and things like that. Sometimes you do have to call in, so bring yourself at least a walkie-talkie at an absolute minimum. Right, so that's everything I wanted to cover off. I feel that they're the key things that have really helped me and those who have traveled with me prepare for a really enjoyable, stress-free road trip. Of course, if you have any more recommendations that I may have missed, or anything else that you wanted to add onto what I said, please drop a comment below. I'd love to hear it. And as always, get out there with your all-wheel drive or your four-wheel drive or anything like that, and just get out there, give it a go, and I'll see you guys next time.